Hello, very welcome on my YouTube channel. I hope you're doing very well as your families. Okay, so thanks again for supporting my initiative of conducting the second stream in English. It's really important for me as long as I can check my today's level of English and furthermore think about how to improve it. And of course, at the same time, I hope that you enjoy my streams and you can get some useful and interesting information from them. Alright, so today's plan will be the following. I would like to steal your attention for the first around 25 minutes when I will be talking about the prepared topic. Once I finish, I will be very happy to try to answer you on your questions, and I have already prepared 1, 2, 3, 4 questions from the comments. So I will answer them during the stream. So as I have said, estimated time en route today will be around 2 hours, and during this period when I'm talking about a prepared topic, you can leave your questions in the chat, but I don't guarantee that I will read it if you put a lot of ones there. So there are 2 options to help me see your question. The first one, you can use deletion alerts. Yes, the link is in the description. And the second option is again donation with the Yandex donation. You can use there, and you can use the option of the super chat to make it appear above the screen. I will see your question in this case too. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about a very complicated and interesting topic. Today I would like to cover a topic of flight deck cooperation, and honestly, I have never conducted such a complicated stream, even in Russian language, so I have prepared notes. Sorry for that. From time to time you'll see my eyes are going to the screen because the topic is really long and I would like to not to forget my ideas, so that's why I will be doing this. Sorry, because there are some haters on YouTube who always observe the eyes of that guy on that side of the screen, and they say, you're a cheater, you're reading from the screen. All right, I'll be doing this. Okay, so let's talk about the flight deck cooperation. Let's start. Okay, so already hundreds of thousands of hours have been already spent by different wise heads all over the world trying to find best solutions and recommendations and best practices how to cooperate better and thus enhance the safety in journey. And you probably know that the major factor of nowadays incidents and accidents in aviation is a human factor, and a huge amount of this 80%, which is official number, a huge amount is on our side, belongs to the pilots. But does this necessarily mean that we pilots are the weakest link in the aviation chain? No, of course no. I need to turn the page. We are flying the aircraft, so we are staying ahead. We are the last wall of defense, and we are always at the face of the biggest troubles because we are flying. And in most cases, pilots' mistakes are an outcome from the discrepancies of other people. Let's say airplane designers. Everyone knows about the faulty MCAS design of the 737 MAX. Poor maintenance can be a problem, lacks of training again, which have been provided by the instructors previously, bad SOPs, bad airline policies, etc., etc., and etc. But what is also true, many mistakes happen just because one pilot failed to carry out this or that action, and this wasn't cited by his colleague, or the colleague was too shy to call out the mission or deviation. All right, so this was an introduction. Now I would like to talk about what we captains expect from the first officers we are flying with. And a spoiler, we expect them to participate, to be initiative, and to be assertive. Once I finish with this first topic, I will proceed with just a couple of recommendations how airline instructors can teach junior pilots to make them be more motivated to express their concerns, to be more vigilant, initiative, and assertive. So, what does the captain expect from the first officer? Let's talk about the rules.
Okay guys, let me tell you about the rules. The captain always makes the rules. The rules are subject to change at any time without prior notification. No co-pilot should be allowed to know all the rules. If the captain suspects the co-pilot knows the rules, he or she must immediately change some or all the rules. The captain is never wrong.
If the captain is wrong, it is a misunderstanding which was a direct result of something
the co-pilot did or said wrong. The co-pilot must apologize immediately for causing such misunderstanding. The captain may change his or her mind at any time. The co-pilot must never change his or her mind without the express written consent of the captain. The captain has every right to be angry or upset at any time. The co-pilot must remain calm at all times unless the captain wants him or her to be angry and/or upset. The co-pilot is expected to mind read at all times. The captain is ready when he or she is ready. The co-pilot must be ready at all times. Any attempt to document the rules could result in bodily harm. The co-pilot who doesn't abide by the rules is grounded.
Alright, welcome back. I hope you have understood that this was a funny video, and in real aviation, what the captain expects from the first officer is definitely opposite. So, in simple words, every captain will say that he expects the first officer to be proficient, and this is self-explanatory, I think. Line captains, they are not instructors, so they expect the first officers who come out of the training process to be able to fly the aircraft within the limits defined by the airline during all stages of flight, correctly using the levels of automation from basic manual flying up to the highest automatic mode possible. And I would like to stress it again that line captains, they are not expected to teach first officers to fly the airplane. But flying is not everything which is nowadays required for a pilot to be considered safe. Modern pilots are expected to acquire good non-technical skills or good CRM habits, and this refers both to captains and first officers. This means that every pilot can cooperate effectively with any other pilot he is flying with. For example, they both should be always aware of the state of the aircraft, of the state of the procedures. We call this like stay ahead of the aircraft, and they need to participate in decision-making process. And this is what I want to talk about now. Talking about myself, I want my colleague first officer to be initiative and assertive. I want the first officer to speak out loudly if he sees something unusual happening inside or outside of the aircraft, and I want him to keep an eye on me, follow my actions, and if I omit something or I make a deviation, I want him to help me by giving a notice. And I'll be really happy when the first officer saves my ass from a mistake, and I always praise him for that. By the way, who is the best captain's friend? Not the flight attendant, of course. The best captain's friend is the first officer. And in means of the CRM, the first officer is the main resource of the captain. which is sadly not always recognized by some captains even nowadays, after all this CRN training completed. In third, some first officers, especially quite junior, are not assertive enough to express their concerns in the flight. And aviation history, the history of incidents and accidents, knows a lot of cases in which captain did weird things which were not corrected by the first officers due to this or that reason. So lack of assertiveness has been cited in many cases. Without having a good criticism, this allowed captains to take wrong decisions and the flight led to a danger. Of course, having some experience in the past, the captain can make almost all decisions solely without asking the first officer's opinion. Let's say, can I make a final field decision before the flight? Yes, physically I can, but this will not be a good example of good captain's behavior. People are different. Some first officers are naturally more initiative and more eager to speak out their ideas, and other first officers, they are too shy for doing this. If you're talking about the very junior pilots, so they are normally very shy to ask questions or express their uncertainty in captain's actions, even though they do have this. Let's say I'm a young first officer, I'm flying with a very experienced captain, and I see him doing some strange things, but I don't understand the reason why he is doing this. I think that he knows what he is doing. So who am I to ask him questions? So this is a normal example of junior pilot's behavior. So by knowing this, good captains will do something. I mean, they will use very simple techniques to help break the ice, and they will do it throughout the whole flight. Every flight starts with a briefing. If you start your cooperation by showing your interests in the first officer by asking him about, let's say, the final field decision, about maybe he has some concerns in the flight, which might came out from the reading from the flight papers, about if you ask him about what sector he would like to fly as a pilot flying. So this means that you are starting to create an open working environment. And there is another technique which is very straightforward. You just ask the first officer not to hesitate to be initiative and assertive. What I myself do normally say in the briefing room is like, okay, so let's work together as a team. If you see something strange happening inside of the aircraft, outside of the aircraft, if you notice my mistake or my omission, if you don't understand what I'm doing, what I'm saying, please tell me, ask me, challenge me, do whatever is needed to make the flight more safe, and I will do the same. I really appreciate if you do this. And I believe that such introduction is especially important if you are flying together for the very first time. Sorry, I need to have some water. I remember a case. It was a very experienced first officer. After I had or something like that, I heard from him, Denis, thank you so much for saying this. It's really great when the captain starts the flight with such kind of words. And then, once you have said such words, then you must be consistent. If your first officer helped you, let's say he noticed your omission or deviation, then just praise him, just say thank you, very good job, appreciate, and after that, next time he will be even more supportive. Don't try to hide your mistakes, because it looks very obviously, so he will easily notice that you're trying to hide your mistake, and after that, I'm not sure he will support you. Maybe he will start kidding you, but not supporting. The captain is carrying the weight of the final responsibility for everything in the flight, and to make this weight be less heavy, you can use your primary resource, use your best friend, use your first officer. Just show him that you're interested, engage him, involve him into discussions. Let's talk about the decisions. how normally decisions are made. I will give you a very basic example. Let's say we are about to start a weather deviation. Myself, I have already got a plan which looks quite good for me, but I will keep it with me. I will ask my first officer about his ideas, and then I will have two options. If his thoughts are similar to mine, then it's easy. I will say, very good, I think the same, let's do it. So I will make a decision. If he sees the situation differently, I will ask him to explain, and then, again, two options will be possible. Maybe he sees something which I have not noticed, or maybe he didn't notice, which I had noticed. And we need to discuss this, and then after we arrive at a common understanding of what we are going to do, I will say, all right, let's do it. So I will again make a decision. And this is a normal pattern of how we make decisions in the flight. This is so-called collaborative decision making, which is highly appreciated not in aviation, of course. And the outcome is that you also flatten the gradient of the 30 in the flight deck, and this helps your first officer to be more motivated to express his concerns and his ideas in the flight. Of course, if a bad situation happens suddenly and arises rapidly, this is the time when the captain has a right to make fast decisions, which are based on his experience, his knowledge, and his assessment of the situation. In that case, the authority gradient changes towards the captain's side, so the captain will start using more direct style of ruling. And by the way, this doesn't mean that the first officer has no right to express any concern. No, of course not. Moreover, he is expected to do this, but again, decisions will be made by the captain faster than in calm and relaxed flight conditions. Oh, I'm saying too much words. All right, so we have said a lot. I have just finished the complicated situations in which captain starts to direct this or that actions by giving direct commands, but this doesn't mean that the captain can overload the first officer by giving a lot of commands which will be impossible to be completed. So let's watch another video.
Positive rate, gear up, Jim. Jim, call a tower and tell them we've had a fire warning here. We're going out straight ahead. Jim, heading select.
Continental 101 has had a fire indication like to proceed straight ahead.
Jim, heading select.
Stay with me, and climb runway heading up to 2,000 feet.
Jim, get that,
Runway heading to 2,000.
get that engine failure checklist out, Jim. Jim, set talk bug. Jim, flaps 5, please.
Top bug set. Flaps 1.
Turn the auto throttles off, will you, Jim? Jim, can you call the company and tell them that we've lost an engine here and we're going to have to come back?
Okay.
Flaps up, Jim. How's that checklist coming, Jim?
Engine failure, engine fire, severe damage checklist.
Would you tell the girls in the back we've lost an engine, Jim? We're going to have to return. Can you give me an after takeoff checklist, Jim?
After
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. All right, so how can airline instructors help their recent cadets to improve their vigilance and motivate them to be more initiative and more assertive? So besides talking about the necessity of having good, strong academical and, let's say, system knowledge, we must get sure that our trainees are well professional enough, they have a good knowledge of procedures, and they are able to notice discrepancies in the flight. And there are a lot of training techniques which can be used for this. I will describe just a couple of them, which I call controlled deviations and omissions. Let's say an instructor is conducting a simulator training, so he may input some disagreements in the position of this or that switches and the state of this or that system. Let's say he can pull out a circuit breaker on any wall, or let's say he can push down an autopilot disengagement bar. a lot of things can be done by the instructor, but before doing this, he will brief the students that sometimes, even in real life, not all the switchers are in the correct state and not all the systems are operative, and that's why it's very important to learn all the procedures, I mean the normal procedures, talking about the 737, by heart, so to know all the state of troubles with the internet connection, so what's happening with the internet here. I see there is no data coming. Okay, so now I see that the connection is good. So can anybody tell me how it is from your side? I mean, what's the quality of the picture? What's the quality? No. Stream stuck. Sorry for that. This is the 21st century, 2020. So we still don't have the perfect internet everywhere. Yes, there were some problems, so now I'm waiting for you. For me, it shows that the quality of the connection is perfect. So, can anybody say? Okay, I see. Thank you very much. You say it's good now. So let's hope this will not happen again. Right, I'll try to finish. What do you expect from the first officer then? Thank you very much. All right, so how can instructors increase the vigilance, help the pilots to have a good vigilance and be more motivated to express the initiative? So I stopped with, she did say again that the stream is coming with lags, so I've gotten the same mistake. All right, so let's hope it will work. Sorry for that. So in the simulator, the instructor can use this method by pre-selecting switches into a wrong position, by making different files in different systems, and he will tell pilots that they will sometimes the same thing that can happen in the flight. So they need to learn all the SOPs. They need to check every switch, every light during the while they are doing the pre-flight procedures. And before entering the sim, he will inform them, saying, guys, maybe this will happen today, so please be more attentive. For the first time, normally they omit some items. Maybe they can omit circuit breaker stripped or IRS transfer switch in a different position. No problem. You just show him, explain, and 1, 2, 3 repeats, and I swear, for the fourth time it will be okay. So everyone will learn the procedures very well, and he will start be more vigilant. And if you're talking about the training in the airplane, so there is also a possibility to teach pilots to cross-check other pilots' actions. It's quite easy. Sorry, for me it's much more difficult to speak in English than in Russian. That's I need to drink more water. Okay, so before you enter the aircraft, again on the briefing, you need to brief your trainee that you expect to always keep his eye on your job, on your actions, which is, by the way, required by the CRM philosophy. And you can say that nobody knows, people make mistakes, so maybe I will do mistakes today, either intentionally or not. So I want you to check my actions, and please don't be shy to express your concerns and help me. Let's say when you are doing the pre-flight procedure, you can forget to check your oxygen mask, and if you call for the normal checklist, and if your first officer says, Captain, did you check your oxygen mask? This means that your training objective has been achieved. Later on the before taxi procedure, you can call for an incorrect flaps setting. Let's say you have discussed taking off with flaps 1 today, and you will call for flaps 5. And if your trainee is cross-checking what you are commanding with what you have briefed or what you have entered in the CDU takeoff page, and if he asks, Captain, aren't we going to take off with flaps 1? This again means that your training goal has been achieved. Say thank you, and give a correct command. By the way, in this example with the incorrect command for the flap setting, this is something which happens very frequently in real flights, because normally on the 737 pilots, they are getting used to take off with flaps 5 most of the times. I don't talk about all the airlines in the world, but in some airlines they are. And if for some reason, for any reason, today's takeoff should be conducted with a different flaps setting, so this is a subject to mistakes, and mistakes are happening, and lots of stories can be told by this or that large airline which is flying the 737s. Okay, so we're about to get finished. So we are okay, so just a few moments just to end the story. Having said about these techniques, I would like to say that these techniques are very simple, they are very easy, but they can have a very good positive influence on the future pilot work style and pilot behavior. During initial training, during type rating course, this model should be very well introduced by the airline pilots, and the same, of course, should be introduced during the captain's upgrade course. And at the end, if both pilots in the flight deck acquire a habit to always cross-check each other's actions, if they are open to express their concerns and to help each other, so this reduces the risk of having done an uncorrected mistake. And I call this concept as a total cross-check. So these are very basic principles how we practically teach pilots to cross-check, to communicate and cooperate. And by the way, maybe you have noticed I haven't said nothing about the respect which every pilot should always show to his colleague on the flight deck, because I'm sure that this is a normal rule of communication and not only in aviation. So let's summarize what we have just been talking about. First, all humans are prone to mistakes. Pilots are also prone to mistakes, and many mistakes can be easily avoided. The first officer is the best friend of captain, and the captain will inspire his initiative. He will motivate the first officer to participate in the flight. Instructors can also help their pilots, the first officer and captains, by providing an initiative-oriented training. And at the end, I will say that management can guide the airline pilots if they establish effective and transparent SOP policies. I will explain this statement later on in the streams. And what I would like to introduce now, so if you open the description of the stream today, I have put a link to a so-called the Boeing 737 SOP guide. It was written by me, in which I explain what is it, the SOPs, how to work in accordance with the SOPs. You will find, which you might have known, but you know that every repetition helps us to improve. And at the same guide you will find a lot of things about the Boeing 737 normal procedures, about how to learn them more efficiently, effectively, and you will also learn the common mistakes which are frequently done by pilots. Alright, thank you very much for watching me. So I have finished with the major topic for today. Again, it shows that the bitrate is lower than the recommended one. So we are having problems. We have only 116, 120 viewers at a time. Okay, so okay, give me some time, please. I will go through the questions here in the chart. Maybe I find something interesting. Gonna have a flight in a month. So excited. Wanted to share my feelings and make you jealous. Thank you. You made me jealous. Hello, Denis. I'm looking forward to your stream. When I'm watching your stream, I additionally study English. The same like me. When I'm doing the stream, I additionally learn English. I train my proficiency. What I really like on my countrymen, I have put a message that I will be conducting a Russian stream next Sunday, and I'm getting a lot of comments. Please use Russian. Why it's not in Russian? Blah blah blah. Language practice, yeah, thank you, Adrian. I thought you would say, I hope you are doing absolutely fantastic. Oh, I understand. I know that pilot who is using to say these words every time. He's mentor pilot, I think. Hello, happy to watch the stream. Thank you very much. So I'm going through the comments. Denis, have you ever had a flight with 2 crew shifts on board due to the length of the flight exceeding 8 hours? Could you share your experience, please? Actually, 8 hours is not that much. So normally we can fly with a single crew complement. I mean, 2 pilots. I'm looking at the comments. That's why I'm looking there. So normally we fly at the 2 pilot complement crew. Time it's around 12 hours. Sometimes it depends on the time we arrived at the briefing room. So we started our flight there. So we can be working for 12 hours, and in some cases 12 hours and a half. And by the way, this differs from country to country. It depends on which rules they have had problems, such issues in the past. Houston, we have a problem. Yes, this is my baby. This is my kid. So what it shows now, it shows that the bit rate is less than recommended. I lost my ideas. Okay, so I was talking about pilot duty. So in case we are plans to exceed the allowed duty for a minimum crew complement, so this is a time when it shows a gap again. So how is it now? Maybe it's better for me not to look at the screen, because it shows no data, slow bitrate, and I can do nothing from my side to improve it. Okay. If you're able to see me, could you please send me a message that, because maybe you see me, but I see there is an error. So today we were talking about pilot errors. Now I would like to talk about the IT errors. So you see everything is fine. Or maybe this is a prohibited topic. So when I start to talk about how pilots exceed their duty, so it starts to lag, to freeze. So maybe we better proceed with the other question. Let's try. So if you would like to talk about pilot's duty, you can easily send me a private message, and I will describe you how we fly with relief pilots. And answering your question, yes, I did certain number of flights on my previous airlines. So we flew from Novosibirsk to Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk, we flew to Magadan with double complement. Right, so I'm trying to get back to the comments. Okay, now it shows that the quality is excellent. Ilya Vorovyov doesn't understand why Russians are watching the stream on English. Okay, so I'm going through the comments. Dennis, are you gonna watch new movie on Amazon on 19th 97500? I've never heard, by the way, Kirill, about this movie. What do you think about the MPL? Is it more progressive than the CPL? Yes, it's much more progressive. First of all, because this is an airline-oriented training, so I mean that it is the airline who sets up the goals, who oversights the hiring of the candidates for the MPL, and this is the airline who actually pays for the whole training, and this is an competency-based training. So from the very beginning, the airline starts to teach pilots to be competent. So at the very end, they get pilots with more than 200 simulator hours on this type of the aircraft they are going to fly at. So when they start the training, I mean the line training, so they show much better proficiency, much better skills than in comparison with the pilots who just obtained the CPLs. So in my airline, I used to fly a lot with the guys with the MPL, and I think, according to my humble view, I think that they are trained better. What do you think if a captain is younger than a co-pilot? Okay, now it shows that the video is streaming too slowly. So all right, I'm here, I'm back. Does anybody see me? No, it shows it all the same. Once it starts yes, shit happens. Yeah, finally you are back. Yes, finally I am back, but the problems are the same. I tried to reconnect the teams, so it shows no data again, and shows the quality is excellent. What do you think about new PlayStation 5? Or is it really new? I thought that the new is 4 or 3. All right. I have restarted my router several times, so this is not a problem in the router actually. So I see I am back, but it shows no data again. It's because of haters. So this is definitely something on the Omantel side. It's an unlawful interference. Yes, definitely. It's a sabotage, more or less. No. All right, I am back again. Okay, now it shows again the quality is excellent. But okay, now that's okay. So this is a lot of credits. There is a lot of credits from Kakluga here. That 737 SOP guide, did you create it? Yes, this is my job. So I'm not sure I can conduct a streaming today because I was observing the statistics in the OBS. It was really funny. It shows the bitrate, upcoming bitrate. It showed 0 to 2000, 4000, 2000, 1700, 500, and it showed 0 again. So, but actually, until today, I haven't experienced problems like this here. So, I'm really sorry for this. I apologize because I cannot answer the questions, but I'll try to do it. So let's wait. So for the last consecutive 15 seconds, it shows that the quality is excellent. So let's see how it goes. It's for so I've got a question. In a situation like an Instagram post, which solution is more correct from your point of view? Roll angle is already large. Thanks. So today I have posted on Instagram on my Facebook a picture which I took on the X-plane simulator. There was a picture of the Yakovlev 40 aircraft flight deck, and there was a flight in the clouds without having a horizon in sight, and I asked my readers to quickly recognize the situation and to give me an answer. Which direction they will be recovering the aircraft, left or right? And the problem is that this aircraft has the so-called Soviet indication on the artificial horizon on the primary flight display, and this is different from what Western or other world's pilots they are used to. So in the Russian indication, and in the old style Soviet indication, there is a aircraft symbol which rotates with the bank, and the horizon stays unchanged. And in the Western indication, you can see that the whole world is changing with the real world. I mean, the artificial sky and artificial ground is rotating. At the same time, you will see the sign of the aircraft, which is always fixed. So this is the major difference. So in Soviet artificial horizons, the sign of the aircraft is moving, rotating, going and left or right. I mean, and in the Western indication, the world moves, but the symbol stays fixed. So, and they've got interesting answers. So most of the answers were incorrect. And it can be a topic for a very long stream about the difference and advantages of this or that indication, but I'm not sure that I can be talking today, as long as we are having a lot of troubles with the connection. So, but the correct answer in this, it will be left. Of course, it depends on the rate in which we started to bank the aircraft. but according to what the industry wants from the pilots in such a situation, so they'll be relax the yoke and turn in the shortest directions to wing level. So in this picture, the shortest direction is to turn left. So about the internet connection, I'm getting a lot of questions. Why modern aircraft are not equipped with the internet? So why they don't transmit the flight data continuously to the ground stations? So this might be helpful in future investigations of airplane crashes. So you see how can it be in the air, even on the ground, not on the flights. We have a lot of troubles with the internet connection. So it's very difficult to provide a good stable internet connection everywhere. And nowadays it's still very costly. Thanks for inviting me to Zaporozhye. What does the second pilot do when stalling? He monitors the pilot flying's actions, calls out any omissions, and provide him with the attitude, and the trends, the speed and the trends. Thank you very much for your patience, by the way. So it looks like it goes not very bad now. And I have said that I have prepared some questions from the comments. So Iskander asked me how long and how hard for you was to understand Indian accent. Have you been in Ras Al Khaimah airport in UAE? Okay, so let's talk about the accent. For me, first of all, yes, I was a little bit surprised with how Indian men are talking, because this is a little bit different accent which from what I have already got used to. But you know that every nation has their own accent. Let's say I'm Russian, I have my own accent which can be difficult to understand to other nations, or maybe it can sound a little bit rude for others. And if you're talking about the Indian accent, it's different because they use different intonations and they used to speak very fast. But anyway, if you're talking about flying, so this means that we communicate with the guys who are really proficient. I mean, the controllers, the pilots. And I cannot say that it was difficult for me. Yes, it was surprising because they used to say a lot of words, and the traffic, especially over Delhi, over Mumbai, over Chennai, there is a lot of traffic there, so you hear this blah 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 blah. But I cannot say it was difficult. Let's say if you fly to France for the first time, maybe you will not understand at least a half of what they are saying. Or if you fly to the UK, you know that the worst English is in the UK. Because this is their native English. They used to speak very fast, they used to use the normal phrases, so that's why it's very difficult to understand a native Britishman, Englishman. So as about the question about having been to Ras Al Khaimah airport, not yet. I have heard a lot about this airport. I know that there are some general aviation aircraft based in this airport, but I've never been to there. It looks like it goes. Alright, so we know that the captain and the first officer have to choose different meals during the flight to avoid food poisoning and its consequences. The question is, have you ever found yourself in such a situation where this choice was crucial? You know, it depends on the airline. A lot of airlines, yes, this is true that they have implemented such a policy, and mine implemented such a policy also. But this doesn't mean that you cannot eat the same food. This means that you can do it, but in different time. So you have to have a very good gap between the meals, the same meals in the flight deck. myself, I have never experienced such a problem. I don't remember whether my friends experienced such a problem. I know that there were cases with food poisoning, but as long as they were having different meals, this didn't affect the flight safety. Natalia, thank you very much for your questions. Pilots are known to be highly skilled professionals. Thank you very much. But we are all human, so sometimes people just can't get along with each other, maybe because of their personalities or their working styles. Is there a possibility to avoid being in the same crew with a certain first officer or a purser? Because in my field of work, I can ask my superior not to push us together. Yes, the same happens in aviation. As I have said today in the very beginning, so every pilot must be able to fly with any other pilot. But this doesn't happen everywhere, in all over the world, in all airlines. And again, besides having, let's say, different personal attitudes, maybe they have troubles in the past, who knows, there are other kinds of problems nowadays. I mean, I'm talking about the political problems. Let's say, if you're working in an international airline, so you will definitely have people from different countries which are having some troubles in cooperation. So let's say, I know there are such policies like not to plan Pakistani guys and Indian guys in the same aircraft. So this is what I know. And again, honestly, I don't know what's the policy in my today's airline, because I have never experienced any problems with other pilots, so I even was not interested in how to do this. But in my previous airline, there was a policy that a pilot can apply for not being planned with certain pilots, but this was a subject to investigate. I mean, the reasons, because if a pilot doesn't want to fly with a lot of pilots, so this might be a reason for this. But if you're asking me if there is a chance, so I think normally yes, but in every airline, a good action will be try to find why this happens, what was the reason. Maybe there was just a personal problem, maybe they had some troubles in the past, so they cannot fly together in a single cockpit. Yes, why not? But let's say if this pilot doesn't want to fly with a strict TRE, this is not the case, then he will be not planned with that guy. And finally, I've got a very complicated question from Pavel about Rostov accident. I'm not sure I can answer all your questions. I will just express my own concerns. So you ask, what conclusions did you make for yourself from Rostov-on-Don disaster? They were well-trained pilots. There were no stupid decisions, no excessive courage. They followed SOP and they followed CRM principles. After the first missed approach, Captain tried to understand his mistakes and asked first officer's opinion. Was it good or was it mess? They briefed properly second attempt, but then something went wrong. Why does it happen in your opinion, and how other pilots can predict such huge problems? That's all these questions are really good. This situation is really, let's say, something a subject to be investigated by the CRM teams, because what you have said is true. If you read the final investigation report, yes, the crew acted really good. The CRM was at a very high level, so they were staying calm, they were discussing the options, what to do, how to conduct the second approach. But even so, this accident showed that even a well-prepared crew can get into a very stressful situation, and because of different factors, let's say the factor of fatigue, the factor of the stress, the factor of a night flight, the factor of not having the good visibility, flying in a very bumpy and turbulent area. So this also affects how we how we understand the state of the aircraft. So all this can greatly increase the stress, and under a certain pressure, pilots can behave unpredictably. So they can do things which cannot be easily understood. So if you read the report, it says that there are two different opinions. So the official report says that maybe the problem was from the head-up display. Honestly, I'm not a big specialist in using the head-up display because I've never had such experience. My airlines, my past airline, my today's airline, we don't have the airplanes equipped with the HUD, and all flight Dubai aircraft they are. So, and in the report they say that some indication can be confusing. So this is what we can read from the report. And there is another opinion from the flight Dubai that probably the pilot got this somatogravic illusion, which happens from when the aircraft accelerates. So a pilot can experience illusion that the airplane is climbing. So he tries to push down the yoke in order to arrest the climb rate, and as the aircraft is not actually climbing and it is accelerating, so once the pilot pushes down the yoke, so the aircraft starts to accelerate again, and this causes the feeling of climbing to be increased. So the pilot starts to push it more and more. He uses the trimmer. That's a very big problem. But again, in the final reports, they think differently, Flight Dubai and the officials. Okay, hello, I play sim. I can't land at side wind. Whether I should to direct airplane parallel runway and to fly at diagonal, or should to fly at runway orientation and to be bit turn. Sorry, my English, no problem. It's very difficult to teach pilots how to land the aircraft with a crosswind, especially if you're talking about the simulator. It's such a thing which better to be shown either in the simulator or a real aircraft or in the Microsoft Flight Simulator, doesn't matter. But there are two basic principles, two basic methods we are using for flying crosswinds. First one is to fly the track, I mean to find that course. So you turn your aircraft towards the winds and you try to find that course of the aircraft that allows you to fly on the track, on the center line track. So once you approach the runway, you just put some rudder. Let's say if the winds are blowing from the right, so you put your left rudder just before the landing and the aircraft lands. So you keeping your rudder left and you give some yoke deflection towards the winds, so you keep the airplane rolling straight on the runway. And the second major technique is you are using a side slip. So during the flight, so you bank to the right, I mean towards the winds. So if the winds are coming from the left, you bank to the left. So you fly straight by applying side slip to the right, and at the same time you give some rudder. So let's say if you're having the right wind, for the winds from the right, so you make some right input on the yoke and some left rudder. So this causes the airplane to fly like this, but at the same time you will have your magnetic course equal to the runway track. And in my humble opinion, the second method is more difficult, is more complicated, because the airplane is very sensitive to the rudder. So I almost never use such a technique. And there is a third method, which is like a combined method, when you're experiencing a very strong crosswind. So you will, if you use on the first method, you will be flying like this. So normally before the ground, we are implementing this slight side slip, but at the same time we keep the drift angle. So and then again we get rid of this angle just prior to touchdown. We keep our rudder, we keep our yoke, and roll the aircraft. So in the sim, Honestly, I don't remember what I'm using in the sim. So I hope I have answered your questions. Alright, good evening. Your greeting was early, very similar to Mentor's haha. No, Mentor used to use this to say, I hope you are doing really fantastic. Something like that. Have you thought about doing a stream with him to practice your English? No, I didn't think about it. How many people maximum passengers in the 737? Oh, as far as I remember about the 737-800, the maximum possible number of passengers is like 180 something. As for the 737-900ER, it should be more than 200, I think. Okay, what about the eclipse lights last week? There was a circle phase at Muscat. Did you see that? No, I didn't. Okay. Thank you very much for the inspiring message in the alerts. What happens when pilots get the tail strike? What do you mean? But what happened? What happened to the aircraft, or what happened to the pilots who conducted a tail strike? But if you're talking about if an aircraft experience a tail strike, so this is a situation in which the flight cannot be continued. So we need to carry out a special checklist, and we need to land the aircraft. Not as soon as possible, but we need to land the aircraft at a suitable airport. And after that, it depends on the severity of the problem. So let's say in my previous airline, the past summer, they have got a huge tail strike, and the aircraft could be repaired in the US only. So they did some reparation, maintenance work, some repairing in Russia, and then there was a technical flight to one of the plants, one of the factories in the US, and it took a lot of time to get the aircraft back into service. Which one of the 737 first generation you have flown? None of them. I haven't flown any of original aircraft. I started flying with the 737 Classic 500, 400, and then in 2008 I started flying the 737 NGs. Is it right that some topics like politics, religion, and so on are officially forbidden for pilots to discuss during flight to avoid potential conflict? Or is it just a common sense? I'm not sure that every airline establishes such a policy, but it will be wise if they do this, in my humble opinion, because as I have said today, people are different, their views are different, but we are doing the same job, which is not connected to the skin color, which is not connected to gender, which is not connected to politics, religion, and so on. We are flying. We all are aviation enthusiasts. And if he starts arguing about who is better, Mr. Trump or Mr. Putin, this can lead to a disaster. Dennis, good day, good evening. How you think when we can fly again? It depends on what airline you are talking about. Let's say in my country, in Russia, nowadays there's no restrictions on flying. They are flying with some precautions, but there's no restrictions. If you're talking about Oman, I have no ideas when they start flying because there's no official information. Today I have written an article saying that they will delay opening the airports until the 6th of July. So Now they're thinking about opening the borders between Oman and UAE. Question about the FMC. Is it possible to change stars arrivals really quickly? I mean, pre-program both charts before takeoff and switch between before approach. If you're talking about the modern 737 FMCs with the second route option, yes. You can program the FMC for the second route and then switch between the routes. But if you're talking about just an approach, it's not very difficult to select another approach if you have time, of course. So the technique to use the second route, yeah, why not? You can do it. You can do it, but I'm not sure this will be the same quick as you enter the star for the first route, for the main route. So answering the question, I will say yes. The FMC allows you to select the star or SID, whatever, from the base very quickly, and then you just need to check. You need to check the points. You need to make sure that you're flying right now to a correct point, because sometimes when you select the approach and you are already there, this means that the approach you have just selected can start at a point which you have already passed by. So you need to understand where you're flying at, where you're flying to, select the correct point, and then cross-check everything. So nothing special. Roman, thank you very much. What was the hardest part of flight training for you? That's a very good question. Recently I have answered this question in my latest Russian stream. And I said that when I was doing line training as a first officer on the Tupolev 154, I didn't experience a lot of problems with flying, I mean the handling of the aircraft. But the ATC caused a lot of problems. And I thought that it was my own problem. I was thinking that what can be easier than just to talk, just to hear and talk. But when I started flying, especially when I started to conduct training, line training, I found that it's a very common problem. Pilots can start to handle the aircraft quite, let's say, quite fast enough, but the problems with how to hear the ATC, how to predict what the ATC will say to you, and how to give correct answers. So this sometimes take time. So answering the question, yes, I think that this was the most difficult part of my pilot training. So now the quality is good. It shows excellent. Hi Denis, did you consider buying a general aviation plane after you retire? Is it gonna be hard not to fly on a regular basis? Not in my country, by the way. In my country, only very rich people can allow buying a general aviation aircraft. I'm not sure that my pension will be enough to allow such an aircraft. What I'm going to do, at least I'm dreaming to do, once I retire, I would like to continue, let's say, as a simulator instructor, why not? And again, if I would like to fly during weekends, it's not a big issue. I can go to an aviation club, just rent an aircraft, and I can fly. How do you steer the front gear, the front wheel on the ground? Is there a small steering wheel on the side for each pilot? On the 737, normally there is only one tiller. This is this ground wheel, ground steering wheel. But there is an option. So if an operator wants this, so he can opt for the second tiller on the right. But in my life, I've never seen 737s with two tillers, only in the internet. And answering your question, how do we steer? It's not very difficult. It comes with the experience. So that's it. There are some techniques how to locate the aircraft over the center line, but it's very easy. When you start training of another captain trainee, you just tell him, so this is the position where the aircraft moves on the center line. So please try to find some things, maybe on the glare sheet or whatever, to understand how the aircraft moves on the center line. So just remember this position, and that's it. That's enough. There are also some tricks. So when you taxi, when you make turns, you need to think a little bit, because you see that the aircraft is quite long. So your main gear is somewhere afterwards. So you need to move your nose wheel, and only after that you start the turn. But again, as I have said, nothing special. I think on the long aircraft, such as the 777-300 or Airbus 340-600, so taxiing should be very complicated, but they have cameras. They have cameras to help steer the aircraft. No matter how you speak English, Russian accent cannot be killed. Greetings from Abakan. I see no problems in accent, honestly, because if you're it depends on where you learned the language. Let's say if you know that in my country there's not a lot of opportunities to learn English. I was lucky to learn English at a school for several years. There was a special school. After that, I had zero experience before I was doing my 737 training in the US. So talking about the accent, sometimes when I try to talk, let's say with better tones or something, so I'm not sure that people understand me. If I try to talk with my Russian accent, I'm almost sure that everyone understands me. Because you know, the German accent, Russian accent is something which can be easily understood, I think, understood by other people. Because we try to pronounce sounds, let's say maybe more firmly, more exactly. So that's why I think that Russian accent is not the worst one. Dmitry is asking me in Russian, Denis, is it possible to land the 737 using the instruments only? For sure. Just switch two buttons, you will have an auto land. If you're asking me about the manual landing of the aircraft without having the visual contact, there is a chance. There is always a chance that you can land the aircraft. But this will be unsafe if you try to do this. Do you know somebody who fly with a rock or metal music? No. UK is easy and by far the best ATC. Maybe. The problem is when you talk to an Englishman, and if the Englishman doesn't think about that he cannot be understood very well by other people, he starts to talk very, very fast, using maybe special phrases, specific phrases, and it's really difficult to understand them, especially women. Maybe different people have different opinion, but I judge from my point of view, from my experience. What about, that's key, I finally found this question again. What about a younger pilot, a younger captain than a co-pilot? Maybe this is better for the CRM. I was the youngest captain one of the youngest captain in my previous airline, and I used to fly a lot with guys who were older than me. And I cannot say that in means of CRM it is good. Of course, if both pilots are well proficient enough, both in CRM and both in other technical skills, this is not a big issue. But let's say I used to fly with a guy who was a very experienced Tupolev 154 captain, but something went wrong during his pilot training, so he was downgraded to the first officers. And I just finished my captain training, and we were flying in a fixed crew for maybe 2 or 3 months. And I cannot say it was good for the CRM, honestly, because I was trying to teach him, and I was an experienced captain again, and I was 27, he was 47, so 20 years. And I cannot tell that we had a lot of conflicts, but I think we had a lot of situations when the conflict was possible. So besides saying this, besides saying about this experience, I flew with other old first officers. Let's say I got experience flying with guys who just came from military, so they were flying as first officers, and in military they were guys, let's say squadron commanders or something like that. So it was difficult for them to fly with younger. So again, if you ask me about this question in the means of CRM, I'm not sure this is good enough. But again, I believe if pilots pass through a very good CRM training, if they understand that in the flight deck there is no competition, so there are only pilots, there are the captain, there is a first officer, and the age doesn't matter, the gender doesn't matter, nothing matters except proficiency, except competency. So in this case, this doesn't matter who is who is younger, who is old. Maybe if you are talking about the experience, maybe it will be more useful for the younger captain to fly with the more experienced man on the right, because this experienced man can help them by providing some piece of advice in this or that situation. Because it happened to me, I was a captain with only 2,000 something hours on total, and I didn't have that much situations in my previous career. So that's why it was sometimes it was like a big pressure on me when the situation was questionable. So I mean, the weather was poor, maybe they got some technical problems, so I was always a little bit overloaded because I was trying to find best solutions without having the same practice in the past. And at the same time, I had the same inexperienced pilots in the right, because we started to fly the 737s in 2005, and in a year I was upgraded to a captain's position. Nowadays, if you're talking about that we have a lot of pilots who have good experience on the 737, from this point of view I would agree with you. So if you're young, so maybe it will be better to fly with a guy who is really experienced. If you're good enough at CRM, so maybe this will be a good crew. Why is the rate of decline on Boeing felt in the descent felt in the cabin more than on Airbus? In manual mode, is it fixed or is it a decision by the pilot and the current? Okay, I understood. You're asking me about how you feel the rate of descent or the rate of level change in the cabin when the aircraft climbs or descends, or the altitude in the cabin also changes. But it is the same. I think it's the same on the Airbus, on the 737, and the majority of other aircraft. Averagely, it is 500 feet per minute. And when I was flying as a passenger, honestly, I didn't notice any difference, any significant or noticeable difference between Boeing aircraft and Airbus aircraft. So I think I cannot answer your question correctly. Both use the auto mode. So if pilots need to use the manual mode, so this means that something has happened. So this means that they are experiencing problems with the system. And this happens very, very rarely. So as from my side, again, I didn't notice any difference. Shit happens. It's an amazing phrase, what I have got from you. That's true. Yes, the connection quality is excellent. Finally. All right. You could stream on the audio. Try tomorrow now. So we're almost there. Is there a satellite connection on board? Nowadays, yes, some aircraft, they are equipped with the internet, but I think that is even not half of the aircraft in the world. I think that the majority aircraft, they still don't have any connection except this old style high frequency or other connection possible, like ACARS. I mean, this airplane systems. As for the internet connection, it's really costly. And even if the aircraft is equipped with the internet, it's the coverage is not enough to cover the whole planet. So, and the connection is not guaranteed in this or that areas. So I have mentioned this today. I will tell it again. So there is a very frequent question. So why they don't transmit the video picture from the flight deck in real time to the ground, or maybe the flight data to the ground continuously? Because we cannot provide this. And this is again something which delays the so-called zero pilot flight deck. Because before you remove the pilots from the flight deck, you must make sure that you will be in connection with the aircraft at all times. So you can easily see what's going on board. You can easily intervene if needed from the ground. And so nowadays, if industry wants to establish a good internet connection, they need to do something which is very, very expensive. And expensive not only in the means of aircraft systems or aircraft transmitters and receivers, but in means of satellite systems, on-ground stations. So if you start thinking about the money required, oh man, it's too expensive. What the captain expects from you as an instructor? That's a very good question. Firstly, if I would be a captain who is undergoing a training, what I would like to expect, I would like to expect the instructor giving me a chance to work with people. I mean, to work as a captain, to make decisions, because what's the difference between the captain and the first officer? both they are pilots, so they are expected to know how to fly the aircraft. I mean, the captains, they are experienced first officers normally, so they know how to fly, they know how to take off, how to land. So what we shall teach a captain trainee is we need to teach them to work with people, to use resources, to analyze the flight data correctly before the flight, to make decisions. So this is why we need to allow them some room for mistakes. Because if you start helping him that this or that moment, I mean, I'm talking about easy situations, of course, because at the same time we fly as captains. So when we instructors, when we provide a captain training, we fly as a captain of the aircraft, I mean the pilot in command, so we are having the final responsibility. So this means that we cannot rely on the captain trainee during the whole duration of the flight in every situation. So sometimes we need to take over. And this is one of the hardest parts of the instructor's job actually, because you need to always select between whether to give him a chance to, let's say, to land the aircraft in very difficult conditions, or you will land it by yourself, or you see something strange is waiting us ahead of the aircraft, you see that your colleague is not noticing that. If you would be a first officer, as we were talking about today, of course, you would have shown your initiative, saying, Captain, we have something ahead, what do you think about it? But here, as an instructor, you need to understand, maybe this is just a problem of this particular moment, that the captain is not looking, let's say outside, he doesn't see this or that thunderstorm, or you try to give him a chance, try to imagine how this guy will fly with the first officer, who will also heads down in the flight. So you need to wait until the end, and only after you start helping your colleague. So I found that I'm talking about the instructor's side. So, and as for the captain's side, again, I would like my instructor not to help me at every single moment with making decisions, with let's say talking to passengers, working with the flight attendants, and etc., etc., etc. So I would like to have some freedom. My chat window stopped. I'm looking at the chat window, I see there's no questions. So I reloaded the chat window. Now I've got a lot of questions. Shit. What's happening with the YouTube? Okay. So let me go through the comments, because I have reloaded the window, the chat window. Now I see you have asked me a lot of questions, because I was a little bit surprised that the chat was still not moving. What do you think about Malaysian 370? What is your theory about the mysterious turn, no communication? I have no theories, by the way, but what I can say, that in modern reality, the aircraft can easily get lost over the ocean, because you know the ocean is very big and the aircraft is very small, and there are a lot of uncovered areas. Let's say we are flying from Oman to India over the sea, and we can use only HF radio to communicate. There is no radars en route. So if something happens, it will be very difficult to find the aircraft. What is the most challenging airport you have landed? It's a very frequent question, by the way, and normally what pilots used to answer this question is that every airport under certain conditions, I mean weather conditions, can be the most difficult. But if you're talking about challenging airports, so I've got some experience in flying to Chambéry, France, which is a category C airport, and I used to fly a lot to Tivat, to Split, which are complicated airfields also. and my life in Kathmandu. So nowadays I fly to Kathmandu, Nepal. It's a very nice place, and every flight to Kathmandu is not boring because of their mountains, because of the weather. So now the stormy weather started. Fortunately, we are not flying, by the way. So if the weather is not bad, I cannot say that Kathmandu or Chambéry is very difficult. Yeah, of course, they are different from, let's say, a routine airport like Muscat, for example. But the weather, if the weather gets worse, so the difficulty rises very, very, very rapidly. Because in Kathmandu, say you are doing a VR approach, so you conduct a very steep descent, initial descent. You experience a tailwind, and your thrust is at idle. Your speed is increasing up to the limit. At the same time, the air is turbulent. You see there are clouds. You see there are cells. You see there's a thunderstorm on the quite close to the missed approach route. So this makes the atmosphere and the flight deck to be a little bit more nervous than in a different field. You know, if you land somewhere in a flat region, let's say you're flying to my native Parno, when there is no mountains around the airport, even if you are conducting the same landing, the same bumpy weather, the same thunderstorms, you feel a little bit more relaxed because you don't have mountains. So you have a lot of options how to avoid the thunderstorm in case you need to go around. If you fly to Chambéry, if you fly to Tivat, if you fly to Kathmandu, this means these airports are surrounded by mountains. So this means that the options, the amount of options is quite small. So this makes flying not very boring. If we are talking about Russia, can we have an opportunity to choose aircraft model in airline after studying? Yes, normally yes, but it depends on the airline, of course. If the airline hires candidates for different types they are using to fly, let's say Aeroflot hires pilots for the 737s or Airbus 320s, so normally they ask which aircraft this or that candidate wants to go to. And if you're talking about other airlines, let's say if you're talking about Emirates, they don't provide such an opportunity. They will ask you which aircraft you want to go to, but normally they select on their own. Have you ever landed an aircraft with the ILS Cat 3 Alpha 3 Bravo? You know that I'm an unlucky person. I've never landed an aircraft under a real Cat 3 category. I had, I think, 2, maybe 3 landings under a real category 2 only, but not category 3. Can a disabled person fly an airplane? I think that there are some restrictions, of course, and different countries, they have different rules. As far as I know, in the US, you can be a pilot, at least you can hold a PPL, a private pilot license, with having some troubles with the health. But I'm not a specialist in this question. Dear Captain, what can you say about the preparation of the local pilots in Oman and in the Middle East in general? Will foreign pilots will be always in the top, or there is still a chance for locals? Of course, there is still a chance for locals, and today I have already talked about the MPL course, which I really like. So this is a modern approach to pilot training, and this is a line-oriented training as long as the airline oversees the whole procedure, starting from the hiring the guys. So the selection process is quite good. So I heard that only 1 out of 11 can pass the exams. start the training, and the training is really oriented on the competencies and how to use the airline procedures. So at the end, after having approximately 200 of simulator hours on the 737, they continue training, they continue flying line training, and all this in combination at the end gives a very good first officer. So I really like to fly with the first officers who passed this MPL training, and comparison, let's say I can compare pilots from, let's say, Oman, from Russia. I can say that maybe because of the selection process, I can say that I've never flew with a weak person. So maybe, of course, there is always a room for improvement. Maybe not every pilot was so strong. Maybe I just remember my trainees in my previous airline who were really good pilots, but averagely every local Omani pilot is very good. I'm talking about the first officers now. This is one of the observation which I noticed since I have started flying here. And what can I say? I can really appreciate the work of the instructors. Of course, there is always room for improvements, but again, saying about the whole picture, I really like it. Different countries are different, the mentality is different. Let's say if you're flying with Asian pilots, they are more prone to look at you as a, let's say, as a tsar in the flight deck, as a real captain. So if we are talking about motivation to express initiative, so the Eastern and Western cultures are a little bit different. So let's say Western culture, it's more eager, the guys are more eager to help, to provide ideas and so on. And the Eastern culture is, let's say, more gentle, more polite, so they don't want to argue that much in the flight deck. And this is again something which needs to be taken into account when you're flying with the men from the Eastern countries. If you're talking about the Middle East, it's the same like in my country. We are somewhere in between. So we are not as authoritarian as like Chinese captains are, and we are not as relaxed as, let's say, the US captains are. So here in Oman particularly, I didn't fly with every country of the Middle East, of course. What I like, everybody is very friendly. It's very good for flying. Everyone is not that much tensed. So I mean, I say that there is a lot of relaxation on the flight deck, but sometimes it seems like this. But at the same time, the level of proficiency is quite enough, of course. I will say it for the third or fourth time. There is always room for improvement. But if you're asking me about the top, if these new countries, and my country as well, because in my country we still have a lot of problems which need to be solved if you want to be the top again. So, and I cannot say that my countrymen they fly the aircraft better, or they fly the aircraft too much worse than local pilots with whom I'm flying with nowadays. So I'm saying too much words because the question is really good. Well, and I was asking myself the same question when I was about to leave my country for Oman, because I know nothing about this. I knew nothing about the culture itself. I knew nothing about how to work in an international airline. And when I saw that people here are so gentle and so friendly, nowadays I even cannot say when I'll be ready to leave Oman again to any other country. Let's say when I will return to my country, because I'm enjoying working here, and I like to get this kind of experience when I see the management, which is at the same moment is quite proficient, and at the same time they are good diplomats, or they are, as I have said, they are very gentle and friendly. but at the same time they are strict enough to not to be, let's say, this lesser cockpit. Sorry, I'm saying too much. I need to drink some water. So maybe I'll proceed with another question. Otherwise, I will stuck for several minutes. By the way, when MAX will be returned to airlines, will you fly them again or not? I hope, I wish I will start flying the 737 MAX as soon as possible, because this is the best 737 I've ever flown. This is the first stream to an English-speaking audience in recent years. This is the second. Could you tell us about your retraining to Boeing 737 in the USA? What was the most interesting case during the training? The most interesting case was I was very surprised by the behavior of the instructors. Every instructor was of a very high standard, and the way how they teach pilots to work on the flight deck was the same. I mean, they were providing techniques, but these were official techniques. We could find these techniques in the training manual. So everybody was very, very standard, and every instructor was very patient. As long, we didn't fly Western aircraft at that time. So we came from different Soviet aircraft like Tupolev 154, 134, and Antonov 24, which got two pilots, an engineer, a navigator, and the way how we communicated in the flight deck was different. Now we started to fly just two pilots in the flight deck, and the training was in English, and most of the guys, my English is not very good, by the way, but it was not that bad in comparison with other guys. So I can really appreciate the work of the instructors, because they could find the words to explain, to describe, and then at the end they achieved the training goal. So if they observed that this or that pilot didn't understand what they were saying, they were trying to calmly say it in other words different, so they can try to find another approach in order to make this pilot understand and comply with the task. Because in the past, I didn't have that much experience, by the way. I started my 737 training, but in the past I got used to a different instruction style, which was, let's say, more direct, more rude, and training methods were very different from one instructor to another instructor. So the biggest surprise for me was the standardization. Are you going to fly only 737 until retirement, or later maybe another type of aircraft? Why not? It's not a big matter which aircraft you are flying. The matter is which airline you are working for. Denis, Russian viewers wants to know, this stream be saved on your channel? Every stream is saved automatically. What cost index does your airline use for short and medium flights on a Boeing 737? It's a top secret. Questions from the English-speaking audience are very different from Russian-speaking viewers. I think I didn't have too much questions from native English speaker or English-speaking audience. I think that the majority of the questions are still coming from the Russian speakers, but the questions look the same. What abilities should the pilot have? Okay, so again, it's a very good question, which can the answer can last for 10 or 20 minutes, half an hour, but I would like to stress responsibility. So the responsibility, I think this is the the most important thing which pilot must acquire. Because if you are responsible, if you understand the responsibility of your job, so this means that you will be able to improve. So responsibility means that you will be always improving, trying to work better. If you are not feeling the responsibility for your job, this means that you can get relaxed, very easygoing. So this is what I'm thinking about this, and this I'm getting the same question from my Russian auditory, and I used to answer the same way. So I think that the responsibility is maybe the main character of a pilot. Good evening. When you fly without using the control column, are you using rudder? Of course, if you would like to turn the aircraft and for any reason it cannot move the yoke, so the best way to control the roll of the aircraft is using the rudder. At the same time, you can use differential thrust, and if you want your aircraft to climb or descend, you can increase or decrease the thrust again. Greetings from Brazil. Brazil, hello. Thank you, Alberto. Why pilots doesn't use autoland in good weather conditions more often? Is autoland is safer only when we talk about low visibility or something else? If we start using the autoland every day from a landing to landing in good conditions, so what about our skills? So they will get degraded, I think. So in order to keep us at a good level, I mean to keep our basic flying skills, I'm not sure it will be good to conduct so many autolands. And if you're talking about safety, it's not a big problem to land the aircraft, by the way, if you can do it, if you're doing it every day. But if you stop doing this, let's say one day, you will not have a possibility to make an autoland. Let's say you are doing an NDB approach under weather, turbulence, thunderstorms, wind shears, icing, whatever, and you need to fly the aircraft manually. If you don't have enough skills because you were using the autoland every day, what about the safety now, by the way? Will it be safe? I think I think you need to think a little bit about this. Sorry. It's difficult to talk. What ELP level have you got? They say that I have got the level 5, but honestly, I evaluate myself at level 4. As far as I know, you have flown to Yerevan. It is easy to land there. Like any other airport, Yerevan can be difficult and can be easy. There is nothing difficult to land the aircraft in Yerevan, except there is an arrival route which forces you to descend very quickly to get stabilized. And I think this is the only feature of the Zvartnots, Yerevan airport. When the weather is not good, again, this airport is surrounded by the mountains, and there is a border very close, I think to the south of the airport, yes. So this makes flying a little bit more complicated. Waiting. Okay, nice to see you again. Thank you very much, Pavel. Russia will open worldwide routes soon, inshallah. Waiting in Moscow, and maybe let's make a party with subscribers somewhere in Baro Cafe. I hope I will get a chance to fly to Moscow this summer. I'm not sure that we'll start flying, by the way, because to start flying we need to get some passengers en route, and you know, as long as there is a worldwide crisis still ongoing. I'm not sure that there will be too many passengers wanting to fly from Russia to Oman or even to Thailand. So anyway, I hope I try to keep optimism that not only the borders will be opened soon, but the flights will be restarted as well. Please say your default cost index. There is no default cost index. The cost index is subject to change because it depends on, let's say, fuel price. It depends on the flight hour cost. So that's why it's cost index. It's not fixed because it's subject to change. So it can be, today it can be 24, next day it can be 28, it can be 54, for instance. So there is no standard. Борис Гаврилов, спасибо. Could you tell me why the 737 pilots don't use the mode something like Airbus normal CWS? I know you have this one, thank you. Actually, the CWS mode is a very old autopilot mode. This means that the airplane will keep the attitude set by the pilot. Let's say the pitch and the bank. So let's say I would like to fly with bank 20 degrees and with a pitch of, let's say, 5 degrees. So I establish the bank and establish the pitch, and I can relax the column. I can remove the hands from the column, from the yoke, and the airplane will keep this 20 degrees bank and 5 degrees pitch by itself. The only time we must to use this mode as prescribed by the flight crew operation manual is when we're flying in a severe turbulence. By the way, there is no restriction to use CWS at any other part of the flight. So I know that some pilots are using this CWS for flying visual approaches. I was in the flight deck. We did a test flight in 2016, I think. So we were about to take some aircraft from another airline. So I was flying as observer, and there was a demo flight. So the pilots of that airline, they were flying the aircraft, and they flew in Teruel in Spain. This is an uncontrolled airfield, and the only option, the only approach available was a visual approach. And I saw how the pilots were using CWS for the visual approach. Myself, I tried it several times. I cannot say it's very comfortable to use this mode as long as the sense of the aircraft is very artificial. Of course, if a pilot gets used to it, maybe he can benefit from using this mode. But honestly, I see no problems in flying the aircraft in this old style way when you control the attitude by yourself. But that's a good question. I think that almost every pilot every pilot of a 737 starts thinking about why he can't use the CWS for the flying. And again, there is no restriction on flying the CWS in the manuals. At least I don't know about them. But the only time we must use this mode is the severe turbulence. Hi Denis, why do you reduce flaps to 15 during the go round on Boeing 738? Doesn't it decrease the lift? I think that almost on every aircraft we need to reduce a little bit the deflection of the flaps. On Tupolev 54 we used to go around with flaps 28. I don't know about the Airbus, but I'm sure they do the same. And if you're flying with the landing flaps, this means that you have a lot of drag. And you need to use a lot of power to overcome this drag to fly the aircraft. So when you're flying with less flap setting, you have less drag. Maybe you have just a smaller lift than with the flaps 30, just a little bit. But as long as you're having much less drag, this means that you can climb faster. So you have got additional thrust. which can be transferred to the vertical rate of climb. So that's why we retract the flaps for the go-round. The green cup is part of your channel. The orange cup is a defective cup. Please return the green cup. I will think about this. Thank you. Tell us a little bit more about ABT. ABT is not a topic to tell in 5 minutes. You know, I started to work out another video about the ABT, and I've already written a scenario for 6 parts. 6 parts, which every part will take at least 20 minutes. So but in just a few words, what is a traditional pilot training? So traditional pilot training is to train to proficiency which will be good enough to pass through the test of the qualification. And the qualification itself, it's like, let's say it's like a set of elements which are needed to be checked. Let's say how the pilot can take off, how the pilot can land the aircraft with the crosswind, how the pilot can handle the aircraft with a single engine flying, and how the pilot demonstrate abilities during some maneuvers. So this is a qualification evaluation. But in real life, what is required for pilots is ability to cope with something non-standard, which the pilot was not have not been directly prepared for. Let's say if we talk about a case which happened 2 years ago, I think, or 3 years ago, with the Southwest 737, when at the same time they got left engine damaged and the blade hit the window and there was a rapid decompression. At the same time, because of the engine had stuck, the aircraft experienced a great roll towards left, and all this happened at the same time. So we do not train pilots for coping with such situations. So, but the pilots managed to solve the situation. So they use their abilities to understand what's going on. So they prioritize the task, fly the aircraft, do the whatever is needed to do, and landed the aircraft safely. And nowadays, what the EBT is trying to do is they are trying to teach pilots competencies. So there are a certain number of areas which are the same in means of evaluation, and the pilots are to be trained using different approaches, mostly based on the scenario-based training, in how to I forget this word in English. In how to rise up every competency to a desired level, and so at least a good level which is suitable to fly the aircraft safely. And so the difference is, say here we were talking about simple elements, takeoff, landing, blah blah blah. Here we are talking about the flight itself. We are talking about a lot of phases of the flights in which something can happen, and the pilots need to use required competencies to manage the situation safely. So we cannot train pilots for every situation which can happen in the flight, but we believe that if we train pilots to communicate better, to discuss problems, to find best decisions, to provide good leadership, teamwork, to teach the pilots fly the aircraft again, because flying is the competency as well, auto flight, manual flight. If we teach them to communicate better, and if we use scenarios to provide that training, so if we can discuss this or that pilot mistakes together, so the industry believes that at the end the pilot's abilities to cope with difficult, non-predicted situations can be better. So let's see. So the EBT started to get implemented 5 years ago only, and not all airlines in the world have started to implement the ABT. So let's see, maybe in 10 years we can talk about the results. And today we already talked about the MPL. the multi-crew pilot license, and this MPL course it is also based on the competency-based training. So in my humble opinion, this is the future of the pilot training. So we start from the MPL training for a certain airline, and at the end we proceed to that airline and we continue our competency-based training. So we are training up to a competent pilot. So this is just a very few words about the EBT, evidence-based training. How are the chances of a foreign pilot getting a job with Russian airlines? There is a law, so no foreign pilots are allowed to work for any Russian airline except they are type-rated captains and there is a state permit for this airline to hire expats. So this is a government requirement. Have you ever been to Lviv? No. Mark Galay wrote, the hero of the USSR, Sidov, said, if a man who is going to fly thinking he is going to be a hero, so to do a feat, it means that he is not ready to fly. It can be applied to civil aviation. It must be applied to civil aviation because in the civil aviation these macho pilots, they are not welcome. So if you go to your job thinking I'm a hero, I'm a hero pilot, so I can do it. Nobody can do it, but I can do it. This means that you'll better do something else, but not fly the civil aviation aircraft. Because we need to be cautious. We need to always avoid unnecessary risks. If you feel like a hero, this means that it's very probable that you will go through, even though the situation could be avoidable. And I think the passengers, they would better pay for the pilot who avoids unnecessary risk, who doesn't go through. Have you used alternate flaps to extend? In practice, no. On the simulator, we use it very frequently. What is your favorite brand in cars? Ford. Ford Explorer. In what period of time, I think you're asking, a man can become an airline pilot from scratch? If we are talking about hours which needs to be get by a pilot for the CPL, so normally it's like 250 hours, and so I think a year and a half, something like that, because you need to go through the training first. But if you start doing your license very quickly without having any pause, if you start flying every day, I think you can finish within half a year. It depends on how fast can you pay for it, or how I'm not sure about how it goes in Europe, but as far as I know, in the US you can let's say you can attend the classes for your exams, or you can just go and try to pass the exams without having prior preparation. So this really saves time and this saves money. And as long as I know, this is permitted in the US. I'm not sure about the EASA rules. But if it is permitted, this means that the period of time can be really shorter. If you're talking that style, I mean the way what is in my country, what exists in my country, it's quite difficult, because every who wants to be a pilot, he needs to finish the state school, and there are two options. Either he will learn to fly for another 2 years and 10 months, and the second option is, I think, 5 years. Could you tell us about your retraining to Boeing 737, typewriting course in the USA? Did you pay for the training yourself, or 7 paid for this? Actually, 1 month ago, when I conducted the very first English stream, I talked a little bit about my history, about my career, and I told just a few words about my training in the US, by the way. And if you're asking me about the money, I didn't pay myself. But we signed for a training bond of, I think it was like 25,000 US dollars or something like this. So the contract said that if we were unlucky to get failed, we would need to pay the airline this amount of money. And my monthly salary was around 20,000 rubles, so it was like $600. So the bond was $25,000, and my monthly salary as a first officer of Tupolev 54 was $600. So this was a very good motivation not to get failed. What if you're Russian but live in the US? Is there any chance that you can work in a Russian airline? Of course, there is a chance. If you finish Russian state school, you can work for Russian airlines. Otherwise, it will be really difficult to validate your license. What's the difference between 9 and niner? Niner is the same as 9, but niner is in aviation radio telephony language. Sorry for that. Because you know that different numbers, they pronounce differently. Say, we don't say 3, we say 3, 5, niner. So this is for the better understanding. Oh, I'm beating my last previous record, so it's 2 hours and 22. I think we lost around half an hour because of the connection problem. So far I see that the connection is excellent. Вертолетчикам привет. What do you think about Elon Musk and SpaceX? I think that was a very great milestone. Denis, you mentioned the alternate flaps. What does it mean? Is there additional spare flaps on the 737? No. This is, let's say, an additional possibility of operating the flaps. Because let's say, if something gets wrong with your hydraulic system, which is the main source for the normal flaps extension, you can use the alternate source for the flaps extension and flaps resection. Which is electrical, by the way. And the time to extend and retract the flaps is quite different. It takes much longer time, and there's no skew protection, twist protection, blah 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 protection. I know Vasily Levachkin personally. Say hi to him. Hi, Vasily Levachkin personally. Nice guy. Stabilized approach policy. Our SOP states only minor deviations below minimum stabilization height, short in time, normally less than 5 seconds are allowed. Why 5 seconds, not 3, not 2, for example? normally, before you start correcting this or that deviation, you need to recognize, and this takes time also. So let's say if you allow deviation to last not longer than 2 seconds, no, this definitely means that you will not have enough time to recognize the deviation. And after that, you need to have time to to fix the deviation. So that's why when I was creating this policy for the 7 airlines, for global airlines, that's why I put 5 seconds. What's the main difference between Russian, Soviet aviation, and Western aviation? Is it true? Philosophy, greeting from Greece. It's a good question. Actually, there is no difference between Russian, Western, blah blah blah, because the problems which Western pilots experienced in the past, they are the same which Russian pilots or Soviet pilots experienced also. And I have prepared another video. It's a very famous video. Maybe you already watched this on YouTube or as a movie. It's old style flying. It's an old style flying. I will show it now. And by the way, going a little bit ahead, this is a Western crew, not a Russian crew.
Lobby, check your final position. I'm going to take her down. Wait a few more minutes, Skipper. Do as I say. It looks like do as I say. Give him a few more minutes. I've already waited too long. Here we go. No, we don't. Get a hold of yourself, you yellow.
So if you talk about different philosophy, different approaches, I cannot say again that there is a big difference. In the Western countries, they started to implement CRM much earlier than my country started to implement this. And before implementing the CRM, the idea was different. Even in the US, they oriented for individuals, not for a teamwork. And the same happens in the Soviet flying school and later on in the Russian flying school. So they were not paying too much attention on how people can communicate to, let's say, recognize the risk factors, to avoid mistakes and blah, blah, blah. So once we started to implement the CRM, so we started to change our approaches, started to change our philosophy. And the same happens all over the world, here in the Middle East, there in the Far East countries. So some countries, some Western countries, they are well ahead of other countries, let's say like my country. My country is a little bit ahead of some other countries. So, the industry is developing, the industry is moving. So if you talk about mentality, I think that I had already said something today. The mentality is different. So we need to find some good approaches to make people from different countries understand the basic principles of the flight safety. Again, if you talk about CRM, and nowadays everything is about the CRM, because every CRM has developed to a lot of branches. We already talked about the MPL, we talked about the EBT. All these come from the CRM approach. And this doesn't depend on Western flying school, Eastern flying school, it's all the same. Which speed is safe for landing without flaps on the Boeing 737? It depends on the weight. So I think with the maximum landing weight, I'm not sure, but I think it will be like 170 something. 175, 180 knots, something like that. Is it possible to get pilot's education grant from airline in Russia? I'm not sure. I heard that there are some students who have paid for whom the airlines paid. But I'm not a specialist in this question because I've never conducted such kinds of things in my previous airline, so I didn't have such a responsibility to provide such kind of training. I mean, such kind of support to the students. Don't be nervous. Yes, it's really difficult. But again, I'm enjoying the stream, by the way. But it's really difficult to talk for 2 hours and a half for me. I mean, not difficult to talk, but difficult even to find words, because you know that's maybe because of the pressure, because of the tiredness, because I see that's 10:30 here, and I woke up early in the morning at 6:30, by the way, so I'm a little bit tired, but I'm not nervous, by the way. Dominikas, I didn't understand your question honestly. Most of the people spend about $100,000 or euros to become a pilot, but can I become a pilot not with money, but with the school? How I was learning, because in every subject. Okay, I will talk about my country. In my country, a man can become a pilot for free. Yes, this is how to say, the policy of education. So we have a lot of universities, we have a lot of colleges which provide this or that kind of education for free. At the same time, there's an option to pay for it. So if you're good at exams, if you can pass the exams, you can become a pilot for no money. The government will pay for you. Even not the airline, not the commercial organization will pay for your pilot training. The country will pay for you. First, the company pays for you, but then you are obliged to work for the company for 5 years. I think this is about that question about, is there a chance that the airline will pay for the education? Yes. So maybe you've got some more questions. I would like to try to answer them. Or shall we stop the stream now? So in Lithuania it can be done for free in VGTU University only. Why not? Very good. So, all right, let's make a captain decision. Thank you very much for supporting my initiative of conducting this stream in English. Thank you very much for participation. Thank you very much for your questions. Today was a little bit difficult for me, as long as we've got some problems with the connection. But anyway, I enjoyed the stream a lot, and I hope that some information which I could provide it was at least a little bit useful for you as well. Thank you very much for my Russian speaking subscribers. I'm going to conduct another stream on Sunday at around 6 p.m. Moscow time. Thank you very much. Be safe, stay safe, and fly safe. All the best.